Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you all to this very important meeting today, Tuesday, May 5th, 2015. In the City of Portsmouth City Council chambers, I would like to ask Commissioner Devers to lead us, please give us invocations and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Devers.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. Almighty God, as we meet to serve our community, help us use our resources wisely and well. Allow us to represent all members of our community fairly. Guide us to make decisions to promote the common good. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Devers. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, we will now have roll call. Please indicate your presence electronically. Seven members of the Planning Commission are present.
Commissioners, before you are the minutes of April 7, 2015, public hearing. If there aren't any changes, we're in need of a motion.
We need a motion.
Chairs in need of a motion. Commissioner Hudson.
I motion that we accept the minutes of last month, April 7, 2014.
15. Thank you, Commissioner Hudson. Chairs in need of a second. Commissioner Thomas.
I second that motion.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. The minutes are approved by a vote of 7-0. Announcements of future meetings and conferences. Please note our next work session is Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2015 at 12:30 p.m., 6th floor conference room, followed by public hearing at 1:30 p.m., City Council chamber. Items reviewed today will be presented to City Council for action at their June the 9th or June 23rd, 2015 public hearing or as otherwise noted. Planning Commission rules limit a speaker up to 5 minutes to speak. We also ask that everyone please silence your cell phones at this time if you have not already done so. Our first item is Z15-02. This item was deferred from our March the 3rd, 2015 and April the 7th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting. Z15-02 Churchland, Michael Perry, L.A., ASLA, representing Commonwealth Assisted Living, requests a rezoning to expand an existing assisted living facility. The expansion request is for 24 additional beds, a new entrance, and additional parking. The request includes 4904 and 4908 West Norfolk Road. The properties are further described as Tax Map 721, Parcels 6 and 7. The property is designated as low to medium density, single-family residential on the city's comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map. Our staff coordinator, Stacy Porter.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Porter.
Thank you. The applicant proposes the expansion of the Churchland House Assisted Living Facility at 4916 West Norfolk Road. The expansion is required to serve up to 104 patients. I've highlighted the location of the facility in red here on the slide. The applicant proposes the use of the neighboring properties to the east at 4904 and 4908 West Norfolk Road to accomplish the expansion. Currently, 4904 and 4904 is under the ownership of the applicant with the plans to acquire 4908. Both properties require both a rezoning and use permit to allow for the assisted living facility use. The accompanying use permit is also being heard at today's public hearing. The proposed rezoning will be from general residential GR to high-density urban residential URH. Both properties contain single-family residences. The properties are surrounded to the north by a city water tower. That property is zoned high-density urban residential URH, and to the east by residential single-family development zoned general residential GR. To the south by single-family residential development, also zoned general residential GR, and to the west by the Churchland House Assisted Living Facility, zoned high-density urban residential URH. I'd like to provide a brief zoning history of the Churchland House development. As shown in the shading, these are the original boundaries of the Churchland House property at 4916 West Norfolk Road. The facility's original use permit was approved by City Council July 14, 1987, for 60 residents. City Council approved a use permit for an expansion of the facility on October 9, 1995, to allow for up to 72 residents. The 1995 expansion involved the acquisition of property formerly known as 3911 Cedar Lane. Incidentally, the approved construction never occurred. Let's see. The facility received an approval for a use permit by City Council February 11, 2003 for site improvements similar to those approved in 1995. No request was made for additional patients. In 2008, a use permit was approved for a second expansion of the facility on April 22nd. An accompanying rezoning was approved February 26, 2008. This expansion involved the acquisition of the former rear portion of 4908 West Norfolk Road. Again, no request was made for an expansion on the number of patients served. And to bring us to today, today's request is expansion will involve 4904 and 4908. And I do want to note that also the use permit, which you will hear today, involves 4940 West Norfolk Road. This is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant. An on-site expansion, which is highlighted here with that red circle, is proposed, as well as an expansion of the east wing. The east wing, as you'll note, will utilize the rear portion of 4904 West Norfolk Road. The applicant will maintain a phased approach to expanding Churchland House and will maintain both 4904 and 4908 West Norfolk Road as single-family residences. The comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map recommends low to medium density residential development for the two parcels at 4904 and 4908 West Norfolk Road. Staff, however, maintains our comprehensive plan, including our future land use map, is a guide for development and fully supports all policy statements within the plan that encourages business retention and economic development growth within city limits. As I did note in the staff report, Policy 2 within Chapter 5, the Economic Development chapter of the Comprehensive Plan states, in part, that the city should implement strategies and programs to nurture business growth and investment, including retention and the expansion of existing businesses. Policy number 4 within Chapter 6, and that's our Housing and Neighborhoods chapter of the Comprehensive Plan, encourages a range of facilities and services that are important to supporting the quality and livability of our neighborhoods. Further, Policy 4 addresses providing housing for special needs populations such as the elderly. Therefore, staff recommends the approval of the applicant's request with the use permit. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you so much, Ms. Porter. Commissioners, you have any questions or discussions? Any questions for Ms. Porter? There being none, thank you so much, Ms. Porter. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We need a motion.
Chair is in need of a motion. Commissioner Devers.
Chairman, recommend approval of file number Z15-02.
Excuse
Pardon
me.
me, Scott.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
This is a public hearing.
Yes.
Sorry.
Madam
Ladies and
Secretary.
I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item Z-15-02. I do have two speakers on this item. As I call your name, you may come forward. Stephen Blaine, state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, with that imminent motion, we're not going to add any comment, but we're happy to. My name's Steve Blaine. I'm from Charlottesville, and with me is the project manager, Kevin Willis. Happy to answer any questions, but I think the staff report is very thorough and supports a recommendation for approval, so we appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Blaine. You're a great attorney already. I see that right now. Yes, sir. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next speaker is Kevin Willis. Same thing?
Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward at this time, state your name and your address for the record, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Commissioners, would there be any discussion? There being none, the chair is in need of a motion. Commissioner Devers.
All right, once again, recommend approval of file number Z-15-02.
The chair has received the motion. Need of a second. Commissioner Youngblood.
I second the motion.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. This item is approved 7-0. Our next item, UP-15-05, no, pardon me. Our next item, UP-15-02, Churchland, Michael Perry, L.A., ASLA, representing Commonwealth Assisted Living, requests a use permit to expand an existing assisted living facility. The expansion request is for 24 additional beds, a new entrance, and additional parking. The request includes 4904, 4908, 4916, and 4940 West Norfolk Road. The properties are further described as tax map 721, parcels 3, 5.2, 6, and 7. The property is designated as commercial, instructional, and low to medium density, single-family residential on the city's comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map. Our staff coordinator, Jonathan Hartley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is John Hartley, Planning Administrator in the City Planning Department. This is the second part of the application for Churchland House. It is the request for the use permit, where the rezoning request dealt with two parcels. Essentially, this request deals with all of the parcels that are hatched on the zoning map on the right of the screen. So it essentially includes the entire corner, with the exception of the child care facility that's in the area. This is you saw this map earlier. Again, this is just another map showing all of the parcels that are included in the use permit request, including the two parcels that you considered and recommended approval of the rezoning. The use permit is a requirement of the V ordinance. There are no special standards in the ordinance other than the general requirements for development. They are proposing essentially two additions. Like the animation, Stacy. Thank you. And they currently have 80 residents, and they're proposing to increase that to 104. And the other thing that they're proposing possibly is to add parking. I'm not sure this. There we go. Add parking on an adjoining site, which can be done under the ordinance with our off-site parking requirements. The staff looked at this. If you remember, this item was continued a number of times. There were essentially two issues at the time. One was the somewhat fragmented approach to the expansion of their facilities, in that they're essentially buying residential properties adjacent to residential neighborhoods. And the other was an issue with stormwater. Both of those issues, I think, they've responded to. The stormwater, they've indicated that they can handle the stormwater in compliance with our regulations. And in terms of their expansion plans, this is what they're proposing, and they may come back at a later time with additional expansions in the future. This is a sketch of the elevation. If you actually look at the buildings look a lot better than this sketch does. No offense to the designer, but it does give you an idea that they're remaining consistent with the designs that they already have. As Stacy indicated earlier on the rezoning, to the north is a water tank owned by the city of Portsmouth. To the south is single-family residential, which is zone GR. To the east, this is single-family residential, and then to the west of the project is the bank building and the daycare center, which is next to that. There are a number of conditions that staff has proposed. If you notice, the rezoning was unconditional, so we are proposing a number of conditions with the use permit. First off, the concept plan that I had on the screen, the development be in substantial conformity with that preliminary site plan, subject to any minor modifications during the site plan and approval process. Suggested a condition that the occupancy be limited to no more than 104 residents. Because of the single-family character of the surrounding area, we've proposed a condition that the occupancy of the single-family residences shall be limited to single-family only and not be used in association with Churchland House. And then also, wherever there is a single-family residence adjacent to an institutional use, a buffer yard is required, and we've cited that as a condition. And with that, I'll conclude my comments. Staff is recommending approval with the conditions that are in the staff report, and as I mentioned. And I'll try to answer any questions you have about the use permit.
First of all, I just want to say thank you to the planning department for your due diligence in doing what you do for the city and also, for this here community. Commissioners, are there any questions or comments from Mr. Hartley? There being none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Stephen Blaine and Kevin Willis are available if you have any questions, or would you either of you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
You're
Once
welcome,
again, I'm Steve Blaine from Charlottesville. Jen, want to thank the staff for its thoroughness, and it was a pleasure working with both Mr. Hartley and Ms. Porter on this project. That's all we have to say.
Any questions for the attorney, Mr. Steve? There being none, thank you again, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is a public hearing on item UP-15-02. If there's anyone in the audience who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward at this time, state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any discussion? There being none, Chair is in need of a motion. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, I want to make a motion that we approve UP-15-02.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas.
Second.
Point of order, point of order. You had to wait for me to call on you, sir. Commissioner Vaughn. Commissioner Hudson.
I second that motion.
Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and we will be voting electronically.
Could I butt in one last time?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Just for a point of clarification, I want to make sure that the motion included the conditions as recommended in the staff report. The motion did not include the conditions.
Gotcha. So we need to rescind that. Okay, Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, thank you. I make a motion that we approve item UP-15-02 with proposed conditions in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Commissioner Hudson.
I second that motion.
Chair has received the motion in a second. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. This item is approved 7-0 with the proposed conditions within the staff report. Our next item, UP-15-05, Paradise Creek Industrial Corridor. Stephen E. Heretic, on behalf of Pure Properties, is requesting a use permit to operate a concrete processing facility, including the use of portable stone crushing equipment at 3991 Elm Avenue. Pure Properties is also requesting to deviate from the access and screening requirements for heavy industrial facilities in the IN Heavy Industrial District. The property is designated for heavy industrial uses on the city's comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map and is also described as tax map 387, partial 10. Staff Coordinator Jonathan Hartley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, again, my name is John Hartley, Planning Administrator in the City Planning Department.
Good to see you again, Mr. Hartley.
Why, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I enjoy being here.
Yes.
Your next application is a request of PER Properties, Inc. For a use permit to operate a concrete mixing facility, which includes a stone crushing operation. This particular piece of property it has been vacant for many years and eventually ended up in the hands of the Portsmouth Ports and Industrial Commission, PPIC. And PER Properties entered into a contract to purchase the property back in 2010. This property is also involved in the cleanup of the river from I just went blank in terms of the Superfund cleanup that's underway for the wood products facility that was down there that caused a lot of pollution. So there's a little bit of intertwining in terms of what's going on now. Part of their agreement was that they would cooperate with the cleanup of the river. By way of the zoning map, the property is zoned industrial or heavy industrial district. To the left is a photo and then a drawing of the grain facility that's proposed there. This is an aerial photo. This property sits essentially between the Jordan Bridge and the Norfolk and Portsmouth Beltline Railroad. It is immediately south of the Norfolk Navy Shipyard, and as you can see in this photo, the berth that's next, closest to the facility is capable of housing an aircraft carrier.
It's big.
There are essentially a number of components to the overall development of the property, and some of these, well, let me just proceed through it. The primary business that PER is interested in is grain and bulk storage, and they're proposing to build grain silos as tall as 84 feet in height, as well as 2 large warehousing buildings. It's our determination that activity is a permitted use as a port facility, and so really is not on your agenda or under your consideration for today. Again, it's a permitted use. They can do that without any special approvals from either staff, commission, or council. Second piece, of course, is a wharf. They're building a wharf for the delivery of grain, possibly the shipment of grain. They also have a rail dump facility that can handle the dumping of grain and transferring it into the silos. So it's a fairly complete grain storage port facility. The 2 pieces that are, and I think Stacy added those nice fancy circles again. The main facility that's that the use permit is for is the concrete production, and related to that, the aggregate crushing in association with the concrete production. Those require a use permit. Staff has determined that is heavy processing or heavy manufacturing, which requires a use permit. There are also 2 other components in your application. There are a number of criteria for heavy processing, heavy industrial facilities. One is that they have access to a collector or major arterial road, or major collector and arterial road, and that they be, and another is that they be screened with an 8-foot fence or brick wall or wall. The applicant is requesting that those 2 standards that deviations from those 2 standards be granted in order to allow this concrete facility. Are there any questions about any of that so far? Mr. Vaughn.
I have one question. What is the habitat loss that they're preparing for? It says here mitigation for habitat loss. What is that referring to? The fish, the otters? I don't think we have otters.
Well, that's a standard criteria for considering a use permit. Staff has determined that there really isn't any significant habitat loss associated with this facility. Yeah.
Okay, but they've also made provisions for oyster reef. Is that going to be productive?
And I can't answer that question. You might ask the applicant that question.
Thank you.
This is a photograph of the site. If you've never been down there, it's worth going and seeing one, the shipyard from what you can see, but also the other activities that are going on, as well as the potential for future activities, I might add. These are photos to the west of the adjoining industrial site, as well as the SIPSA cogeneration facility. The lower photo gives you an idea of what Veneer Road is, which is the access road into this property off of Elm Avenue. To the north, as I indicated, is the Norfolk Naval Shipyard, and if you go down there, you get a sense of how big aircraft carriers are. This, I believe, is the Eisenhower that's in a berth now. The lower photo is the Norfolk and Portsmouth Beltline Railroad Bridge, which is always in an upstate unless it's being utilized. To the south, these are pictures of the containment area. In the lower picture, you can see the containment wall here that's part of the Superfund cleanup, as well as the dredging that's going on. I might also point out that there are other grain facilities both north and south of this site on the other side of the river from Portsmouth. There are a number of conditions. Let me add that we have been in close communication with the Navy since we received this application. We are required by law to notify them of applications within 30 days of the public hearing. They did consult and work with the applicant and his attorney, and there were a number of conditions that were proposed by the Navy that we have incorporated in the conditions of the use permit, and those are cited in the staff report, and I'll just kind of run through those quickly. Again, we've proffered the general concept plan that was, or not proffered, but added as a condition, conformity with the general concept plan that was submitted. We've proposed that the aggregate crushing equipment be operated only between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Unless there's emergency situations. They've indicated a certain size of crushing equipment, and so they've agreed to a condition, and the Navy has agreed to a condition that would limit it to one Eagle Crusher 1200-25 cc or equivalent. As you go down into that condition. There's a condition that the cement mixing facility will be self-contained and within a totally enclosed building. The dust control measures will be undertaken throughout the operation of the facility and the bulk aggregate, as well as on the bulk aggregate pile. In terms of the screening, there really is only one area where screening is available, and so we've included in the conditions a screening requirement along the southern border, wherever that's feasible. And there are also conditions here that were suggested by the Navy that the use of materials or any operation of any inherently explosive nature on its site in connection with the aggregate and ready mix production operations shall be prohibited. And then one of the improvements they're proposing is a 150-foot observation tower. And the Navy has asked that be restricted in terms of any video equipment or taking pictures towards the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. And then the last two conditions, 10 and 11, are essentially they've got to maintain all their licenses, permits, and, of course, pay their taxes. So it's a fairly complete set of conditions. So staff is recommending approval of the use permit as well as the deviations to the two standards that the two requirements that are in the zoning ordinance, that being the access from other than a collector or major arterial, and the screening requirement with the conditions in the staff report. With that, I'll stop and try to answer any questions. I know Mr. Heretic is here representing the applicant, and Michael King and Doug Taylor are here from the Navy. Should you have any questions from them, and they may have signed up also to speak. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartley. We do have some questions for you, sir. Commissioner Thomas?
Hi, Mr. Hartley. Thank you for the presentation. My question, you laid out the conditions that the Navy has, but on this slide right here, You mentioned a few times that there's a cleanup going on, and
Yes.
that's what is this? This wall right here is like a containment wall, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. So how does the build out of this concrete production impact the current cleanup that's going on, and what are the, I guess, conditions that have been set forth to make sure that that cleanup is not disturbed or?
Well, the cleanup is being undertaken by EPA, and essentially the containment area, this is the best picture to show you. You can see the wall comes around like this, and essentially what they'll be doing is putting the contaminated material in this basin and then covering it. They're using the PER property essentially as a staging area for materials and equipment associated with that. And you ask a question I'm not sure I can answer in terms of how do you protect that. I know EPA is real particular about placing restrictions on the use of that property once a Superfund site has been remediated and cleaned up. If you, we have another item on the agenda that involves a Superfund site as well, and
I'm just concerned because from the little bit I know, like they're pulling material from that water that, you know, studies have shown it could cause cancer. I just want to know, like, have precautions been taken that if they are going to be, you know, building and doing stuff on that,
yeah,
you know, what are the measures taken to make sure that none of the materials that have been, you know, taken out don't leak over? Like, have they come to an agreement the same way that the Navy has set their conditions? I guess I'm just trying to figure out the company has worked with EPA the same way they've worked with the Navy.
They have worked with EPA. I mean, one of the original conditions of the purchase of the property was that they would work closely with EPA on remediating the Superfund site. You can see a containment wall essentially across the property here. So, and if you look at the, move on to the site plan, you can see that same containment wall here. So all of the development that they're doing is outside of that containment area. So they won't actually be building on the containment area. They'll be building on what's now being used as the staging area for the work.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just wondering, like, once they get into production, if they've made it. But thank you.
You may want to ask Mr. Heritek that question when he comes forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Also, thank you, Mr. Hartley. You have another question, Commissioner Vaughn?
I might need to hold mine for Mr. Heritek because it's on the contaminated that you're going to take over to another site, another area, and cover it. Will that then be transported somewhere later?
No, the idea of the Superfund cleanup is essentially to dredge the material, place it into that containment area,
Right.
and cover it and cap it, and prohibit development of it in the future, except under certain conditions that EPA would set out. If you think of the ABEX site that is also on your agenda tonight, this afternoon, it's not too dissimilar from that. The idea of remediating is capturing, containing, and capping, or other methods, but that's typically the way Superfund sites are handled.
So they're going to pretty much consider it uncontaminated once they've capped.
The contaminated material would still remain, but it's essentially encased in materials that do not allow leaching or escaping from that containment.
Yeah, because most of the EPA's concern now is from the creosote plant
Right.
from years ago.
Correct.
We're not going to have a recurrence of that.
No.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. Any more questions, comments? Commissioner Devers?
All right, John, very quickly, is any of the Superfund site actually on the development that we're doing here?
No. All of the development that's proposed is outside of the area that's involved in the Superfund cleanup.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last time I was down there, most of this area has already been built up 6 to 8 feet.
And some of that is to elevate the site. They do intend to elevate the site above the 100-year floodplain.
Right.
But it's also staging area for other material being used in the cleanup. So there really isn't. It appears at the front end that there may be a conflict. There really isn't. I mean, they're both. They're very cognizant of what's going on. PER is very cognizant of what's going on. They entered into the acquisition of the property knowing what was going to occur in the long run with EPA. So it's been a fairly open and clean process between EPA and the property owners. So.
And the buildup of the land is very impressive.
Excuse me?
The buildup of the land is very impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
There is one other thing that I'll just mention. We talked about it a little bit in the work session. We refer to this as a concrete plant, but actually it's a mixing facility. This is not manufacturing manufacturing cement. It is a concrete mixing facility. So it doesn't have the environmental impacts that you might get with a cement plant.
Thank you, Commissioner Devers. Hold on one second, Mr. Hartley. Commissioner Thomas.
Hi, Mr. Hartley. Can you go back to that slide just so I can understand what the yellow border around the property? Okay, so that yellow border does represent the property that PER Properties Incorporated will be operating with.
Correct.
Correct. So the production is towards that outer right, where your pointer is. That's the concrete production area.
Correct.
But
actually the concrete production area will be up in this area along the railroad.
Okay.
And the stone pile or aggregate pile will be here.
Okay.
And then the silos and warehousing buildings will be in this area.
Okay, but the contaminant wall for the cleanup does go into that border a bit, right? The staging area for the cleanup.
Again, the containment area is this wall.
Oh, not underneath. Okay.
And then this is essentially a berm that's been built to separate the containment area from the site.
And that will remain within the property owned by PER.
Correct.
Okay, it's just not that they're not doing any production on that part of the property.
They're not going to do any development. That property will not be touched with what's proposed at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. Any other questions or comments from Mr. Hartley? There being none, thank you, Mr. Hartley. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item UP-15-05. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward, state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Stephen Heretic, and I'm the attorney for the applicant PER Properties. First, let me introduce the owner of the property who is with us today, Jim Sammons. Mr. Sammons has been in the grain and shipping business for over 40 years, and this is nothing new to him, but this particular location, this particular opportunity really works really well with what he has done and I think what Portsmouth has done, and really does present some additional new maritime capacity in addition to the very limited concrete production use that we're discussing today. If I can take you back just for a moment, when this project was originally submitted to the Portsmouth Port Industrial Commission back in 2010, the idea is that we would take long unused and disused property, which was industrially zoned, which was completely abandoned for, we believe, over half a century, and to remediate that and to enhance Portsmouth's port capacity. This particular facility will handle primarily barge traffic, but will handle lots of bulk traffic. Mr. Sammons, with his grain facility, realized that this was a perfect location given its locality with rail transportation, with I-464, and with the new Jordan Bridge to facilitate exactly the type of transportation that he's done. And concomitant with that, Mr. Salmons initially wanted to build the port with concrete that he self-produced. He has a similar facility over in Cape Charles. It functions extremely well, and he wanted to put his concrete facility here to basically build the pad that would support the port. As this project developed, he realized that if it cost a certain amount of money to put a concrete facility in a location, why don't you simply keep it there to enhance the commercial viability of the property, and by the way, to keep his workforce in place year-round as opposed to seasonal use, which is typically what surrounds grain facilities. Over time, we have faced a long series of environmental issues, and I appreciate the questions here. Mr. Salmons in PER has worked extensively with EPA, DEQ, Virginia Marine Source Commission, among others, to try to make sure that as this facility is built out, that it is safe, that there is no possibility of further environmental contamination. And frankly, this facility, we believe, is really helping the remediation process. They're taking the spoils in the river dredge, they're putting it right into this facility, they're sealing it over, it's not going anywhere. And because it is an industrial zone, there is almost no likelihood that at any point in the future this is going to be a residential facility, so that there will be no types of contamination that could really affect human life. In addition to that, there will be no leachate or anything leaching back into the river from the production, either as the port facility itself or with the concrete production, which could cause further contamination. We have, as you might imagine, there is a long series of permits that are required, and Mr. Salmons has obtained all of them from DEQ, from VMRC, from EPA, and we're literally working with those entities almost on sometimes a weekly basis as they do the remediation further to the south to make sure that we are continuing to work productively with them and there are no problems. I understand that from some of the questions there were some environmental concerns. We're sensitive to those. I can tell you that this is a very highly regulated industry. You can be assured that quite apart from anything that we say here today, that we must comply with routine inspections from all of the federal and state acronyms I've just mentioned. And I'm delighted to say that more recently we have shared the Navy's request for conditions on this project, and we're in complete agreement with all of them. The last thing we want to do, moving on to this site, is just to cause any interruption or any disruption whatsoever with the Navy's operations. They've been there a lot longer than we have, and they have much more important things to do. And for that, we are extremely pleased that we have Mr. Taylor and Mr. King here with us today to basically agree with us that these conditions belong there, we agree with them, and we're ready to move forward with this project. Just so you'll know, just in moving forward, we are still waiting for the EPA to complete its dredge before we can complete construction of this facility.
40 seconds, Mr. Heretic.
Yes.
40 seconds.
40 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We are moving forward with this. It is taking a while.
Yes,
but nonetheless, everything is going exactly as it should, and this is the next step in the process. Do I have 30 seconons left?
25. Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would entertain any questions, but I really want to thank planning staff for their assistance and cooperation. This has presented some challenges, but we've worked through them, and this is as it should be. So thank you for that. And, Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to tackle them.
Yes, sir. I guess question to the owner, probably can run it by you as well. He's listening. How many jobs would this create, your factory?
We anticipate that we're bringing between 35 and 40 full-time employment positions. And obviously there will be some part-time, but given a few uncertainties remaining, we're not sure exactly how many. Mr. Salmons is always committed to full-time employment of his people.
Awesome.
We want to make those full-time positions, and we're thinking 35 to 40 is really what we're looking at here.
Gotcha. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Vaughn?
I guess the proof of the pudding is when the crabs and the fish and the oysters come back, huh?
Well, and in fact, Commissioner, you know that we are in the process of reseeding an oyster bed out on the river. We're cooperating with Elizabeth River Association with that project. So we're trying to be good neighbors all the way around, and like you, I'm looking forward to some seafood coming back out of that river sometime in my life.
Yeah, when I was a kid, that's where we caught all our crabs.
Right.
Many years ago.
It's been a while, and with the creosote in that river coming out, that I think will certainly help open the way for future wildlife in that area. But thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn and Commissioners. Any other questions, any discussions for Mr. Heretic? There being none, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there anyone else here who would like to address UP-15-05? Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
The chair is in need. Any more discussion? Any more questions? There being none, chair is in need of a motion. Commissioner Hudson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I move that we recommend approval of UP-15-05 with staff proposed conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Hudson. Chair has received the motion. Chair is in need of a second. Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I second that motion.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. This item is approved 7-0 with the staff proposed conditions. Our next item, TSR-15-01, Mount Hermon. Request of Kevin Murphy, representing AutoZone, to obtain Type 2 site review approval for 2 deviations from the development standards of the zoning ordinance. AutoZone proposes to construct 2 rows of parking facing the street where only 1 row of parking is allowed, and proposing to face the building towards Douglas Avenue rather than High Street. The property is zoned General Mixed Use, GMU, and is designated as commercial on the city's comprehensive plan's future land use map. This property is also referenced as Tax Map 160, Parcel 79. Staff Coordinator John Hartley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is John Hartley, Planning Administrator in the City Planning Department.
How you doing, Mr. Hartley? Long time no see, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's been a while.
Yes, sir.
This is a request for a Type 2 site or development plan review, and this is a little bit different than the rezoning or use permit applications that you normally see. Since we have a couple of new members, I'll just kind of walk through some of the basic aspects of the Type 2 process. The Type 2 process was created as an alternative to going for a variance where you get into hardship issues. The idea of the Type 2 is to create flexibility where you have design standards essentially that cannot be met, and in lieu of meeting the standards, the applicant offers something other than the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance as what the ordinance refers to as a public benefit. And those are cited, and they're in your staff report. There's a listing of them. It can be architectural design, site design, environmental sustainability, energy efficiency, and of course there's open space, public trails, and of course there's that catch-all of other public benefits found to be appropriate by the Planning Commission. So ultimately, it's up to you to decide what is truly a public benefit. Having said all that, we have this application and another application. AutoZone is proposing to construct a new store on the site of the old Circle restaurant, which was demolished within the last year. The site is at the corner of High Street and Douglas Street, and on this map you can see London Boulevard and High Street. To the rear of the property is Cherry Carpeting and their warehousing and retail outlet. And actually, to get to this site from here, you have to go another way because you can't go down all the way down High Street because it's closed. But Nonetheless, they are proposing totally new construction. This is the corner site. In the background are warehouse and sales buildings for cherry carpeting. To the east, there are a number of commercial establishments, as well as to the west, you've got an auto repair establishment. To the north, you have an office building that is currently available for lease. And to the south, you have another auto repair establishment. Contrary to the ad, there is actually only one item that they are requesting a deviation or waiver from. Originally, they had an entrance that faced the main entrance to the facility faced Douglas. They have now moved that entrance to the front of the building as you look from High Street. And so there's really the only deviation they need under the Type 2 is the requirement that only allows one row of parking between the building and the street for buildings of this size. They have proposed a number of things as public benefits. First of all, they've redesigned the building. They've changed the color scheme, upgraded some of the materials, added pilasters, moved the entrance to the front, all in response to discussions of the Type 2 request. They have also added some landscaping to the property. Staff is of the opinion that those improvements and additions to the minimum standards are sufficient to warrant a public benefit, and so staff is recommending approval of this request. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you may have. There are representatives of the applicant here, should you have questions of them.
Well, again, thank you, Mr. Hartley, for you and staffs, Bob, Brian, and all you guys' due diligence in what you do for the city to help us grow. I really want to say thank you. I mean that. I commend these guys on what they're doing, and these gentlemen. I love the earth tone colors. You know, it's just something different. It's going to brighten up that Midtown area, in my opinion. And that's it. I digress.
Yeah, we encourage more natural tones rather than the original tones were gray and the white and orange and you know the corporate logo.
Yes.
And we really encourage something different, something a little more subtle, but you know that would fit in a little better on the.
I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree. Commissioners, any other discussions, questions, comments, Mr. Hartley? There being none, thank you, Mr. Hartley. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have two registered speakers. Our first speaker is Mark Talbert. Mr. Talbert, please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Mark Talbert with Dewberry Engineers from Danville, Virginia, and we are the engineers representing AutoZone. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Hartley, thank you for your continued coordination as we try to take this one across the finish line. Also wanted to introduce Mr. Billy Britt here. He is the district manager for AutoZone, and this proposed facility will fall in his territory once it is constructed and open for business. I have no real remarks. I just wanted to introduce us and let you know we are available for questions should you have any.
Well, I just want to commend you guys. I mean, again, as I said in the hearing before we got started here in the public hearing, the work session, great ideal spot, and I love the colors of the building. You know, you're right in the middle of town. I mean, even though we have, other, auto zones and Advanced Auto and all other companies around, but that was just perfect. That was smart business, just in my mind. I commend you. And thank you for also bringing more jobs to our city. Commissioner Youngblood.
Yes, sir. I want to let you know that I had some real reservations about the earlier siting of your property to have the main building facing Douglas Street. And I'd like to say thanks for changing that orientation. I feel much more comfortable with your orientation towards High Street, and I think that the public benefits certainly warrant some consideration on our part. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Youngblood. Any other commissioners, any questions or comments for Mr. Talbot? There being none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Billy Britt.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Billy Britt. I'm a district manager with AutoZone. I really don't have much to say. They've already said a lot. We appreciate the consideration. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Well, I just want to say thank you. Again, you're creating jobs and they're needed, you know. And I just commend you and I wish you much success in business. You may see me come through from time to time and need this.
Got it. More than
Yeah,
happy
just
to help
kicking
you.
with you. Yes, sir. But again, I just say thank you. Commissioners, any other questions or comments? There being none? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on TSR-15-01. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address this application, you may come forward at this time, state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Commissioners, any discussion, any question or comments? There being none, chairs in need of a motion. Commissioner Thomas?
Yes, I want to make a motion to approve TSR-15-01. Sorry.
With conditions?
With staff conditions, sorry.
Thank you. Chairs received the motion. Chairs need a second. Commissioner Youngblood?
I'd like to second that motion.
Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and we will be voting electronically. This item is approved 7-0 with proposed staff conditions. Our final item, TSR-15-02, Prentice Park, Prentice Terrace. Request of Christopher Parrish, representing Dollar General, to obtain a Type 2 site review approval for one deviation from the development standards of the zoning ordinance for development of the property located at 1711 Effingham Street. Dollar General proposes to construct 2 rows of parking facing the street where only 1 row of parking is allowed between the buildings and the street. The property is zoned General Mixed Use, GMU, and is designated as commercial on the city's comprehensive plan's generalized future land use map. This property is also referenced as Tax Map 31, Parcel 42.2. Staff Coordinator John Hartley.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is the last formal item on your agenda. As the item you just previously discussed, it's a request for a Type 2 site or development plan review and approval. Essentially, it's a mirror image of the request that you just considered for AutoZone, in that Dollar General is proposing 2 rows of parking adjacent between the building and the road. Mm-hmm. This is a site that the Planning Commission has dealt with before. It's an area of the city that was originally zoned in one of the downtown districts and rezoned to general mixed use, GMU, to allow for the redevelopment of the property. This particular area is, I guess you could say it's challenged in that it is part of a Superfund site, the ABEX Superfund site that occurred back in the 80s and 90s. There are a number of restrictions that apply to the property. and the city has owned it for a number of years. To be realistic, I think there are many in the city who felt it would never be developed, that it would always remain vacant. And then our Department of Economic Development was able to persuade Dollar General and 7-Eleven to come in and develop the property. It is strategically located between the shipyard and I-264, so it also made good business sense. But just being able to get that property redeveloped, given the environmental issues that exist, in part is a significant public benefit. During the rezoning, just to go through the slides here, the site is highlighted in yellow. There is a second parcel, as we discussed in work session, actually two parcels to the south of this between the parcel subject of this request and Lincoln Street, and that's where 7-Eleven will be locating, as well as a third parcel which is still available for future development. This is a view of the property looking across Effingham Street. In the background, you see the back of a small strip center that's on Lincoln Street, as well as a facility that's operated by the sheriff's office. To your left is the fire station, which is the upper photo, which is north of the property. Across Effingham Street, there are a couple of single-family residences as well as multifamily going to the west. And again, on the site plan, I've highlighted the parking areas in a light yellow to show you what the specific nature of the request is. They want to have 2 rows of parking where the ordinance only allows 1 for this size building in the GMU district. As part of the rezoning, we were successful in persuading Dollar General to do essentially 2 things, which were included as proffered conditions. One was to essentially do an all-brick building, and 2 was to do the individual letters as opposed to the single backlit sign on the building. And it's staff's opinion that once you've negotiated raise the bar, per se, on the development standards, that you don't go back and do it again when another issue comes up. Given that staff is recommending approval of the Type 2 request, and without any condition, since this is a proffered condition that they do the building that's essentially shown in this rendering. So between the architecture, the better materials that they're proposing, and the fact that they're actually developing a previous Superfund site, staff believes that's very supportive of public benefit and would recommend approval. And with that, I'll try to answer any questions that you have. And the applicant is here should you have questions of them as well.
Yes, Mr. Hartley, thank you so much, sir. Commissioner Youngblood.
Mr. Hartley, have you had any public comments about this? In other words, have any of the neighbors expressed any concern about putting 2 rows of parking on the street side?
No.
Thank you, sir.
We haven't heard any comments.
Thank you, sir.
On either application.
Thank you, Commissioner Youngblood. Commissioner Vaughn?
Yeah, on the architecture, are these faux windows or real windows?
I believe that there are faux windows on either side, but the center are real windows.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Hartley? There being none, thank you, Mr. Hartley. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have 2 registered speakers. Brian Lane. If you would come forward, please state your name and your address for the record.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Brian Lane, 57 Cypress Road, Portsmouth, Virginia. We're happy to be here today. It's been a long road, and this is the last of our approvals. Economic Development contacted my clients probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, and there were a lot of issues we really had to work out. And this is the what we were convinced in the beginning, the least of our worries. Number one, the Type 2 design is being requested for the double row of parking. As you saw earlier by the report that planning put together, it was we have double right of way. We have right of way in the rear and right of way in the front. So somewhere there's going to be double row parking. It is an ABEX Superfund site, and we're kind of limited with what we can do with the back area because of that. And we've worked with Jeff Harper. We've done our notification. Plans are basically approved. They're contingently approved based on this approval. And I'm happy to say with a successful vote today, we're ready to start work and break ground within the next 2 weeks. I've heard you say several times, Mr. Smith, acknowledging planning and the effort they do put in. And it's an ordinance that has a lot of things that a designer has to pay attention to.
Yes, sir.
And when we're in different cities all the time, we work with a lot of different ordinances, and I would like to commend planning and Mr. Hartley and his staff working with us to help guide us through this process. This is not something we didn't know was coming. We knew we had to be here today, and we're happy to be here. And I'll stand by for any questions y'all may have.
And I appreciate you guys for bringing, again, businesses, which we do need in our city, and also creating employment for people, for individuals. I think that's vital in this climate right now.
Oh, yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Youngblood.
Sir.
Mr. Lane?
Not that easy.
Sometimes
I want to compliment you on upgrading the facade. That neighborhood really needs an upscale look, and the changes that you have agreed to will go a long way towards making that corridor look better. I'm hoping that any future development that goes into that area follows your lead. You've set the bar nice and high, and I feel very comfortable with a little give and take on our side to give you the 2 rows of parking in recognition of the fact that you are going to have a much nicer looking piece of property here than some cookie cutter Butler building. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Youngblood. Any other questions or comments, Commissioners? Thank you, Ms. Lane. Thank you, sir. Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our next speaker, Rich Smith.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Rich Smith is my name, the very near future owner of this site and developer of the store. By the way, the windows across the front are all real windows. There is no spandrel glass or any decorative type of glass. They're all real windows. We have come a long way with this, as already been mentioned. We prayerfully request your blessings on this, and have enjoyed working with the city and look forward to getting started to the easy part now, which is going to be building it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, I'm going to just tell you one thing. I like your name, Rich Smith. My last name's Smith, Rich Smith. It sounds good to me. Yes, sir.
You.
But again, I just commend you for what you're doing. And again, we need it. We need to grow. Here in Portsmouth, we got to grow. And that's my 2 cents. I'm going to be quiet now. Commissioner Vaughn.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to echo Commissioner Youngblood's comments earlier about the neighborhood, because there's not been anything significant in that neighborhood since Below. And I don't know how far back you go in this area, but it's been years since anything significant has existed. And I know Dollar General isn't Kroger's.
We drug them kicking and screaming into that building, yes.
But very welcome indeed. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Smith? There being none, thank you, Mr. Smith. Madam Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing on item TSR-15-02. If there's anyone here who did not get an opportunity to register and would like to address TSR-15-02, you may come forward, state your name and your address, and you will be given up to 5 minutes to speak. Appearing to be none, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, this public hearing is now closed.
Commissioners, any questions, comments, any things of that nature? There being none, chairs in need of a motion. Anytime now. Somebody can push the button. Commissioner Devers.
Recommend approval of TSR 15-02.
Thank you, Commissioner Devers. Chair has received the motion. No conditions were with that, Madam Secretary. Commissioner Vaughn.
I'll second that.
It has been motioned and it has been seconded. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion and a second, and you will be voting electronically. This item is approved 7-0.
Madam Secretary, I believe that concludes our agenda for today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Commissioners, will there be any further business? There being none. Mr. Baldwin, is there any further business, sir?
No, sir.
Hearing there is none, this meeting is now adjourned.